Sometimes it's good to take note of who's not sitting at your table. As we approach the end of our series, we hope you've enjoying food visits with people from the Bible. I'm Jonathan Watt with Atara Group International, and if you are enjoying the series, we hope you'll press the like button and subscribe to our channel. Let's take a glimpse at empty seats this time around. To be honest, there are some friends you're always glad to share a meal with, and there are others who, frankly, perhaps you'd rather not. Maybe they make you feel uncomfortable. Perhaps you suspect the conversation will veer into controversial topics like politics or religion. Perhaps you just don't have that much in common with them and you're not sure what you're going to talk about. Well, the simplest thing in those cases is to sort of avoid them. You can make an excuse about being busy or leaving text messages unread or just avoid close-up situations altogether. We all know people that we would rather, not share a meal with. In biblical times, a lot of people were known to eat meals at low tables or sometimes arranged on some kind of a rug or material on the floor. And also in Jesus' day, we know that rabbis and other spiritual leaders enjoyed respect and were held in high regard in Jewish society. Most people looked up to the Pharisees in particular because these are the people who followed Moses' law faithfully, and we might consider them, and they considered them, gatekeepers of tradition and righteousness. From their high-ranking positions in society, therefore, many Pharisees looked down on the people they thought were less righteous or less holy than they were. And these were people they considered sinners, the people who maybe followed the spirit of the law or not the letter of the law or just ignored it altogether. And these religious leaders of Jesus' time would not have socialized with tax collectors in particular. So tax collectors were infamous for their misuse of funds and for their cooperation often with Roman authorities. Many were collecting taxes specifically for the Romans. Now, for many Jewish residents of ancient Israel, a marker of their religious life was keeping a healthy distance from persons and communities that might compromise their righteousness. Examples of those they might avoid would be Gentiles, who of course are non-Jews, who would eat forbidden foods like pork, or shellfish, or maybe they had a criminal status and people were concerned they would corrupt their own ethics and lead others into these illegal habits, and they, in some ways, feared tax collectors as well. So if they didn't come into contact with these people, that way they could say, I'm not being tempted into sin. In one sense, it seems rather simple, doesn't it? Well, maybe not so simple. This is why. Parts of the Bible do encourage separation from certain kinds of people, but other parts urge cooperation, and there's examples of those as well. And love for humanity of any type, and being an example in person to those who are not of the same faith as you. So you have to ask yourself, if I remain at a personal distance from someone, is it for good reasons, such as I need protection from the ways they may endanger me, or simply because I feel uncomfortable around people who are not like me, and therefore I'm not inviting these people to dinner? The easiest thing to do is maintain safe, comfortable distance, but miss an opportunity. So here's the conflict. There are many gospel stories of Jesus having dinner with sinners and tax collectors. Take chapter 2 in the Gospel of Mark, for example. It retells the story of Jesus dining with, quote here, many tax collectors and sinners. And this kind of an event drew criticism from the religious leaders of Jesus' day, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes in particular. So the question is, why was Jesus socializing with these people that others were scorning and avoiding? And how could he justify his behavior when there are distinct passages in the Old Testament which discourage these kinds of close and personal encounters? Well, Jesus responded to his critics with the following words, and this is a quote here. It's not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. And he added, I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus was modeling God's love for all humanity, not just for the chosen Israelites who were able to maintain, in some cases, the exact letter of the law. And we need to remember that we all sin and require grace, and we need to be considered righteous by God himself. So Jesus responded to his critics in chapter 9 as well of Mark's gospel. And in this passage, Jesus encourages even small acts of kindness and generosity, such as giving someone a glass of fresh, cold water. He reports that even these minor acts of humanitarian kindness will receive a reward. That's exactly how he says it. And we all know that life can be harsh and even brutal. There seems to be plenty of anger and hostility and bitterness and even violence to be found almost anywhere we look. Although our world was made by God, sin has made it broken and twisted. Yet these acts of kindness, even these small acts of kindness, allow love to shine a small light in the face of that darkness. And it's only because God loved us and displayed to us kindness and grace that we're able to pass these same things on to others. Love is powerful. We're able to get closer to God's kingdom one step at a time by these acts of kindness and love, and by God's grace we can do so. The tide is being turned one occasion at a time, one person at a time, one small step at a time. You know, when Jesus was choosing the disciples, he chose a variety of personalities and professions. For example, Matthew was a tax collector, and even when he was still known as Levi, Simon the Zealot, on the other hand, belonged to an extremist political group that was eagerly resisting, and for some of them even violently resisting, the Roman Empire. And then there's Simon, and then there's the Sons of Thunder. They were fishermen. Jesus was not picking people on the basis of their profession or political views. He picked them for their responsive faithfulness to God. Look, there will always be differences between people, always. Those differences could be ethnic, could be political, could be social, religious, geographic, language, just to name a few of the kinds of differences that come between people. It's not difficult to identify groups of people we consider them versus us. Unfortunately, these identifiers can deepen biases and create additional divides. They're more reflective of our own insecurities sometimes than anything else. And once we label someone as another, it's all too easy to hold them at a distance, even in contempt, and frankly, not invite them to the table. So we ask you, do you have any potential dinner guests which would be unwanted? Do you know people you might even turn away? And if so, perhaps we should ask, who are you really turning away and why? And have you deemed them unworthy, or is it that Jesus does? Consider that as you consider next time who comes to your table.